Okay, we are live. Welcome to my public life as American Nerd. My name is Eddie, and today I have a very special guest. I have a special guest that is a comic book artist. His name is Bill Mckay. Say hello to fans, Bill.
Hey,
Now,
thank you. Thanks for having me.
you're welcome. Now, I looked you up for the first time after finding out who you were, and uh, you do some covers that I actually have purchased. And when I looked up your name, I found a lot of Bill McKays. That's a very popular name. And coming across, I thought I clicked on you. And as a younger picture, there's this one guy, and he is a composer, a famous composer and guitarist. And I said, does he play guitar? Is he a musician? What is he? So I clicked it. That can't be him because it didn't have any art. And then I came across another Bill McKay, and it said Bill McKay was arrested for ticket violation. And
No,
so I had trouble looking for you. But if you put Bill McKay art and you know the comic books, you'll find Bill McKay.
yeah, there's a Bill McKay musician, and then Robert Redford played a character, I think, and it was Bill McKay. So you'll find stuff movie also. But yeah, Bill McKay art, Bill McKay comic, Bill McKay zombie, anything extra will go right to me. Bill McKay boobs, pin up.
Boobs.
Yeah.
That's a good way to be known. You mentioned zombie. Okay. Something I wanted to talk about because I purchased the book a while back, and it was Zombie Trap, and it was by Dan Mendoza. First time I heard of him a few years back, and opened up the book, and I ended up buying it on Amazon. And I liked his art so much that I started purchasing more of his comics, not knowing that I was behind the eight ball of his art being transferred to other artists, such as yourself. And you pretty much took over Zombie Trap from Action Lab.
No, not really. I was
Okay.
just a cover.
Okay, just a cover.
So I did 53 covers
Okay.
for Zombie. But I never really took over when Dan left. I left also, but I had a couple more covers on my contract.
Mm-hmm.
So I played it out just a bit longer than Dan was there. But when Dan was done, I felt it was only right that I left also. But I was strictly a cover artist.
And that was for Action Lab. And you also did some other books, such as Doll Face as well. And I got a couple of those. Doll Face, unknowing that it was you that had been the artist on as well.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that was that took forever to clean that one up, and I finished that on Thanksgiving and had to get it off to the colorist, and it had to be in the next day. That one was my first attempt at Dollface.
We actually like this one. This was one of the first ones that you had done. My wife is a collector of Dollface, really. We have a couple of other ones from Dan Mendoza as well, and she likes Dollface. She likes the storyline. There was a change in the storyline after Dan had left, and you notice some of the changes, that it was a different writer for Dollface and Zombie Trap.
No, absolutely.
How did you get started in comics?
I've always wanted to work in comics, and I just kind of get frustrated, and I was working a job, and I pretty much draw all day. And a friend of mine introduced me to DeviantArt, and he introduced me to sketch cards. And the idea of DeviantArt, where you could do art and post it online, and somebody would see it immediately, gave me inspiration to kind of work harder. I never quit drawing. But soon after that, there was a book called Zombies versus Cheerleaders, and they had a contest for a pinup. If you submitted a pinup and they liked it, they'd publish it. And it was like right on my alley. It was like, how do I not try? If I don't submit something to that, I should give up. And I submitted it, and they said, you know what, we want to use this as a cover. Can you do another pinup? And then I worked on almost every issue of that book, doing colors or interiors, covers, everything but writing and lettering. And while I was working on that, I wanted to find something else. And so DeviantArt and being involved with Zombies versus Cheerleaders made me aware of Jason Martin, who had Super Real Graphics, and he was a writer, artist, publisher. He was publishing Zombie Tramp at the time. Dan was a friend. And so I talked to him about working together because he did everything I didn't want to do. He did putting the books together, writing the books, and I could just draw. And so we started working on a book called Night of the 80s Undead. And so I met Dan through Jason. And when Action Lab decided to expand and create a mature line, Jason was brought on to run that imprint. And then Zombie Tramp fell in, and Night of the 80s Undead fell in. And it did okay. But it was really working on Zombie Tramp, getting to do coverage for Zombie Tramp that kind of made a name for myself and kind of led to everything.
You said that you entered a contest for Zombies versus Cheerleaders. Was that in a local event or was it nationwide?
No, the publisher was in Washington State, and Moonstone was the publisher. But it was just on DeviantArt. It's just anybody is, you can just submit digitally.
No, you said obviously you elected to join into that. Are you more of a horror comic artist, or you did different types of things growing up?
Early on, I liked superheroes. Like I loved Marvel when I was a kid, and then as I got older, I discovered heavy metal and Richard Corbin and Mobius, and that kind of changed everything for me. But I was a horror fan, movie fan since the 80s, and slowly I just moved into drawing. I always loved pinup girls and like brutal violence and things like that, and that's kind of what I've worked on and been lucky enough to continue into comics with. That's where my passion is. Not with superheroes, but just drawing girly pinup stuff and horror, but in a fun way. Like I don't want it to be ugly and
ugly gore.
To be like unacceptable subjects, but done in a shiny, colorful pop way.
I'm trying to okay. I pulled up your Facebook. Actually, I want to go to your there we go. Bill Mckay art.bigcartel.com. It's Bill Mckay art.bigcartel.com is your website. Now this is one thing that has interested me. Pardon me? Was that Bill?
Oh, that's my online store.
Okay, yeah. This is your online store. Now, what I'm looking for is something that right there. Okay. Lady Death. You actually worked with Brian Polito as well.
Yeah, I did 7 Lady Death covers.
Yeah, we collect quite a bit of Brian Polito. Are pretty big fans of his work and also his artists that he chooses to do a lot of their layouts and covers. How did you get involved with Brian Polito?
I met Brian years ago through the guy who published Zombies versus Cheerleaders, and I would go over and talk to him every now and then at conventions and ask about cover work. But it was I think through Dan that we met Brian and had breakfast with him one morning in Vegas, and I think that's where the covers came about.
Because you said you like heavy metal, and you're talking about the comeback and the movie Heavy Metal, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and that made me think you also did Lady Death, so that's why I pulled that up. Were you movie inspired?
What do you mean movie inspired?
Was there any movies that actually inspired you
Oh,
to do or create different art and become an artist?
yeah, absolutely. That was as important as comics. Like when I was really young, it was Star Wars, and that was like the superhero era. But then again, heavy metal, and then Mad Max, and the Road Warrior,
Oh, Mad Max.
Carpenter stuff, and Wizards, and later anime when anime kind of broke in the late '80s. But and yeah, horror stuff. You know, the '80s horror stuff was a huge influence. But I was drawn after I saw Road Warrior. That thing made me go off the deep end with the violence. Just I drew a lot. I had a character called Blade Saxon, and he was just this kind of like juggernaut mohawk metal helmet, this straight rip off of Road Warrior, and it was just brutality.
Now I take it that you grew up listening to a lot of metal.
Yeah, I metal and punk. Yeah, I'm kind of.
Oh, punk.
I was definitely like in the '80s. You know, I was introduced to the Motley Crue and all that shit, and then I saw Circle Jerks, and it was just like, what the fuck have I been? This is like real. This is
Dead Kennedy, Circle Jerks, and Black Flag.
Absolutely, I've seen Black Flag a couple times, but then I came back to metal like when the crossover era, when like Metallica first came out, like their first 3 albums. Later to more punk, but metal and punk are really important also.
That was a really odd time for heavy metal, because in the 80s you used to seeing these heavy metal bands wearing their leather, their tight pants, their hair done with hairspray all up, their makeup, all their chains, and you used to seeing them. You used to seeing this glam rock for 10 years, and all of a sudden this band like Metallica hits, and they're not wearing any of that. And you start listening to Metallica and then Guns N' Roses, and it was sort of that same thing, that they went away from that whole look of Rat and Motley Crue and Poison. Poison was a big one that did their hair up and the makeup and everything.
Yeah,
And
they
then
say that they grunge killed hair metal, but I think hair
there was a small window where heavy metal was still heavy metal, and it was being done by Metallica and Guns N' Roses, who weren't wearing the makeup. But then all of a sudden, here comes Nirvana, and bam! It was like 2 years after the death of glam heavy metal, and then it goes into Metallica, and then you start hearing bands like Anthrax. But once Nirvana hit, the punk, it was sort of punk, but it was grunge, and it was all these things. And you would see this guy in just Levi's and a flannel, and music changed. There was a twist at the end of a decade of heavy metal, and it kind of killed it. But I used to listen to a lot of those bands like Twisted Sister and
yeah,
Rat.
I saw Twisted Sister and Dio when I was and D. Snyder was just using the F word, and I thought it was like, oh man, this is so cool. He's cursing so much. But that was, I grew up in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., and that's what I knew at the time. I hadn't been exposed yet. I still was exposed to punk and stuff like that at a pretty young age, but I was into music very early on, and early on, that's what I knew was what was on MTV.
But you're also on the East Coast, which was in the early 80s for punk, was kind of like the start of punk from CBGBs, and you got to taste a lot of that music back in the early 80s from like Talking Heads and Blondie and these punk bands, the Ramones, and you got to taste that a lot earlier than what we did on the West Coast.
My favorite scene of all 80s punk is the West Coast, Southern California. But I was exposed to punk early on because in high school, I had friends that were a couple years older, and that was during the DC boom with Minor Threat and Bad Brains.
Oh, Bad Brains, yes.
Issue. And so there was a DC scene going on that was really big that kind of died out after a while. But that was my introduction to punk, was from people in high school. Yeah.
The 90s is when Nirvana had come out, was when a new punk genre came out, and that was with Green Day and Blink 182 and Offspring. Did you like any of those bands?
You know what? I would tell you that I love pop punk, but if I was to say, that to somebody in general, they would think of MXPX, and that's not what I think of. Like, I love punk that's like high energy, but I think of the Descendants, who and so the people that, I don't like, so people think of pop punk as like a Hot Topic punk.
Yeah.
And not at all.
Well, Green Day hit pop punk big. I mean, when they came out, I do like Green Day. I liked them with their first album, Dookie. I like their prior album, too, Dookie. And listening to Green Day was a little bit of that punk influenced by the Sex Pistols and stuff like that, but they were more of a poppy type sound, I'd say. And watching them on stage was a total different attitude as well. I would see them live and see them destroy the stage and light a Christmas tree on fire and stuff like that. That was the total punk attitude. But then through the years, watching them become what you said, I never heard that phrase, pop punk, but that's what they were, pop punk. They just transform into this marketing machine and became pop, and all of a sudden they start caring about the environment, they start caring about different issues and different things, and they started becoming more of a band that educates you opposed to a band that entertains you.
Yeah, I like Dookie. I never disliked Green Day. I don't listen to so much more better stuff in that genre. Like when Offspring Smash came out, I was into that.
Love Offspring.
But I didn't really follow them much farther. But the punk stuff now, that's poppy punk, but it's like, it's so emo, kind of like swinging for the fences. Like it wants to be hard, but it also wants to be, like soft, and it's, you can still do a song that has intentions that are and not like, I don't know what I'm saying, but it's just, it's become formulaic, and it's lost all its edge. And that still being, like, right now punk, I think, is strong as it's been in years.
Oh yeah, there's still punk. There's still punk tours where a bunch of punk bands, and they might be local, and then they throw in some popular bands, but it's still going. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I was going to do a podcast on a punk show that was going to be here at the fairgrounds last year, and because of COVID, it died and went away. But I wanted to see bands like, they're not really punk, but they're kind of a punk influence back in the 80s, is Fishbone. I love Fishbone. And
Fishbone, my top 3 all-time favorites. The last show I saw live, I flew to San Francisco to see them play a Christmas show at the Great American year before last. I've seen Fishbone probably 12, 13 times. I've seen them many times as any band.
Yeah, I've seen that band twice. I've seen them once at the Glass House in Pomona, which is a small little building, and it's standing room only. And I think they probably fit over 500 to 1,000 maybe. And it's this little place. It's a real popular place, but it's called the Glass House. And I saw them there once, and Offspring opened for them. And Offspring wasn't even known at the time. But Fishbone, I went specifically to see them. Another band that I really liked from the 80s, and I was young, I went to a place called Magic Mountain, Six Flags Magic Mountain, and I would go see them there. And it's the Untouchables.
Oh yeah.
Now there is a concert or tour that they're doing with a bunch of new punk bands, and they're bringing out all the old punk bands, and both of them are on that venue.
Yep.
I got to look that up. I want to go see that.
Album coming out, and it's being produced by Fat Mike from NoFX.
Oh, you know of it then?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it out here, or is it being toured around?
Oh no, I mean the album. Fishbone
Oh,
hasn't,
okay. Okay.
that hasn't come out yet.
Okay. Yeah. Party at Ground Zero is like one of my favorite songs. Yeah, there's a lot of musical influences that I've had as well. Did music ever influence you to draw? I know heavy metal was kind of a movie and the music, but was there any musical artists that you wanted to draw back
Yeah,
when you started?
I have a bunch I was totally into the punk artists. Like Pushead is one of my biggest influences. I would love to meet Pushead. Like I heard he was at Designer Con last year, and if I knew he was there, I would have gone there just to meet him. Like his line work and the skulls, and that guy is one of my biggest influences. But Mad Mark Rude was a punk artist, and Jaime Hernandez from Love and Rockets. I knew him before Love and Rockets when he was doing covers for nerdcore bands like Dr. No. And
But Love and Rockets was kind of a change for him, going from his older music to Love and Rockets. Wasn't it?
oh no, Love and Rockets.
Yes.
This style was similar. So do you know who the Hernandez brothers are?
Hernandez brothers.
They're
I would say they're from my neighborhood, but no, I haven't.
okay. They did a comic called Love and Rockets. It's three brothers, and Jaime Hernandez was the one that I really liked. But he was also hands involved in that scene. He did a lot of covers for those bands, and that was a big. His art was a big influence on me. Made me want to draw like punk stuff, and I did a lot of punk logos and punk stuff in comics and things like that. Yeah, when I was younger, and still add punk elements in my artwork.
That's cool. Yeah. Music has played a big influence on my life too, but I was never an artist. I never tried to be. I'm more of a abstract artist where if I do some lines going in different directions, to me that was art. But you guys do an amazing job. You have some really amazing art, covers, and now when you do your covers, you do the line work and you do the sketch, and someone else does the coloring, or do you do both?
I don't do the coloring. I'm not a good colorist. To me, every cover is an opportunity to deliver the best thing you can, like a director who hires a cinematographer. So I am very picky about who I work with, but I have been working with one guy mostly for about 10 years. And so I think we have a good style together. And if he's available, we work together. The only time we didn't work together was when his computer broke or there were some issues like that. But I have one go-to guy, Sanju
That.
who is he lives in Mumbai, India, and he's an awesome guy and a great colorist.
Yeah.
Great artist in general.
I notice you're always commenting on his coloring and doing the coloring to your sketches. I figured he'd probably be your favorite go-to guy.
I feel guilty, promoting those things without mentioning him because I feel like it's a collaborative effort. It's not. I don't want ever to be like, "Hey, this is my cover."
Oh,
you know what I mean?
I totally
want
get
him to
that. I totally get that.
I see people that he's worked with, and they go, "My cover for this." Like, what about the guy you work with? Give him credit. But most people do.
Now, most people that know me and are listening to this podcast know that we're putting together an event called Scare Fair. And during the process of Scare Fair, I had a vision. And my vision would be hard to translate on paper because I'd have to try to draw it out. Or, but I had a vision from the very beginning, and some of it went exactly with my vision. Some of it didn't. A lot of the art went beyond my vision, but was still stayed within the vision. And when we posted stuff on our Instagram, I got a lot of compliments. It's like, great job, Eddie. That looks awesome. I didn't do the art. It was a friend of mine named Jenna Sparks. She did the art for a scare fair. And right here is one of the posters. I'm very particular, and probably she hated me during this whole process because I would say, take that off, put this here, or its spelling was wrong or whatever, and I'd critique it, being that she was the artist. It was hard for me to do that and not feel guilty for doing it. But I got to give her a lot of credit, just like you said, you give Sanjay credit for doing your art. She was the artist behind a lot of all of the scare fair. But I had a vision, and she went with my vision and totally blew it out of the water.
Yeah. But you're the client, so the client gets what the client wants. So I with Sanju because I know what I want, and I ask him to make changes, and we work together. And not everything, but most things, it's like, hey, can you change this a little bit? Can you do this? And then I'll do like little touch-up stuff that it's easier just to touch up than to explain to him. But then I have to also deal with the publisher who can tell me, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
Some of them, and some of them are happy with what you do, and some of them are a pain in the ass, and they're like, oh, this go back, and then it's so the client is always right. So you know what? If you don't listen to an editor will make you better. If you don't want to listen to an editor or a client, then you just do it yourself. So that's
yeah, I would have destroyed it. I've tried doing it myself, and having the correct apps or programs to do it, I would do it the absolute hard way and take me forever. I might get I might get something close to what I'm aiming for, but I won't hit it perfection because I'm not using the correct programs. I'm not using the correct apps or whatever that you guys use to do all your art.
Or as the client, you'd hire somebody else.
Yeah.
It's like if one listen. Now, to me, it's like if I don't want to be criticized, then I can just do my own art, which I'm working on my own book. But I wouldn't be, it's no editor ever told me to make a change. And I was like, oh yeah, right. Every time I've ever been asked to make a change, I was like, oh, fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. And then I pulled down like a couple hours later, and then I changed it, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. So it made me better taking the criticism and having somebody who was the client, or an editor nitpicking. So yeah, that's good for an artist.
Right. That's a good segue right there. You mentioned that you're doing your own book now. You have something coming out in Kickstarter in September or October. Want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm finally working on a book. I've been doing covers, and I've written and drawn comics my entire life, but with the comic covers, that's been really good and keeps me busy, and I've gotten away from doing stuff like that. And I never really published my own book. And so with COVID, it seemed like the time was right. And I've been developing a book that I'm writing, drawing, and publishing.
You gave me a peek at who the character was, and right off the bat, when I saw the character, I thought she is a badass character that I would like to know about, like to read about, and like to see. And it reminded me so much of the Road Warrior meets Tank Girl, but the coloring and the drawing of the art of her is what really intrigued me. I'm going to show a picture of who we're talking about here. There you go. What is her name?
Her name is Kim. So the book is Kim the Delusional, and it's kind of hard to describe. she lives in two universes. So it's part fantasy, horror, grindhouse meets part crime, zombie grindhouse come together. And she is just out of her mind. And it's just brutality, over the top, sexy. I just am throwing everything I have into this, everything that I love, grindhouse films and horror films and action films. And
Was she based off of influence of yours?
I have another comic that has a much bigger story. That's a crime story. And I have a lot of characters in that. And she just became eventually a side character in an offshoot kind of crime part of the thing. And I kind of like the setting of the character, and what started with her in a zombie kind of crime story just became bigger and bigger. And then I decided, let's do this first, this offshoot single character first, before I try and jump into something that's much bigger. And as I did that, it just grew and became bigger and bigger. And so I still like to do the other main thing, but originally she was created in a way that I could do more fantastical, kind of crazy, over the top stories within a story that was more based, not in reality, but more crime based and not fantasy horror based.
Is she surrounded around other characters that have a unique trait that you can actually do a spin-off?
Yeah, so the other characters that are around her are main characters that were in the original bigger story that I had, who are a bunch of kind of criminals and drug dealers and really bad people. So she's not a bad person, but she gets caught up in something. And so the supporting characters are those criminal people from the bigger story.
You're gonna have a couple of artists, great artists, that are teaming up with you and doing some cover art. Can you mention some of them?
Yeah, covers Dan Mendoza, Sun Kanumaki, I hope I pronounced that right, Elias Chazudis, Jose Varis, Randy Green, Nate Zerdy, and I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. Sora Sung, Ryan Kincaid, and I think that might be a for issue one. But I'm sure
behind you is another example of your character, and that right there is drawn by Sun, correct?
Yeah, that's what's on the monitor.
Yeah, she looks awesome. I can't wait for that comic book to come out.
That's a killer cover. That's on my wallpaper. That gives me inspiration to keep barreling ahead.
Well, Sun is an awesome artist. My wife has been following her for a while, and I enjoy a lot of her art, and she's just perfect. Her line work and her curvature and stuff like that, it's just awesome.
Yeah, I met her in Toronto with Dan, and when I saw her stuff, I think it was the Monsterella cover, and I was like, how do I not know who you are? And right away I knew I wanted to get something from her cover wise, and I was like, I knew she was gonna like explode. I'm a huge fan.
We talked the other night. We had a phone conversation the other night, and it shocked me how much you knew a lot of the artists and how close you were to a lot of the people, not just artists, but people that are coming to Scare Fair as well. And it's a small world. One of the artists, of course, being Dan Mendoza, and how you've known him for many years, but also Curtis Rakovic and couple of other people from Los Angeles. It's a small world when you look at especially doing something like this, putting together a good cast of people to come out to an event, and then all of a sudden you have everybody jumping on as well.
It's
And I,
mostly I don't go anywhere except for, and I travel. So if I saw the people that live next door at the grocery store, I don't know who the fuck they're like. I wouldn't even, you know. But when I do get out, I go to conventions and I'm into art and I'm into artists and I like talking shop. And so that's why I know so many of these artists. And also online, Facebook, I'm almost at my 5,000 max. But as far as really personal friends, it's, probably 10 people. It's all like I follow art and artists. It's what my interest is, what I do when I get up in the morning.
how much of COVID like kind of destroyed your inspiration to continue going without knowing when there's going to be an end to COVID?
To me, COVID worked out really well. Now I took a financial hit pretty strong just from not doing shows, but
Yeah.
it forced me to focus on my art. And I do believe my art's gotten better and I wouldn't be as far along on the book. And I don't know that I would have started if I didn't, because I was doing shows like every other weekend. And the time, like today, I was a little behind because I have a show tomorrow and I was preparing for the show. But when I have shows, you prepare and then you come home, then you're beat up and you have like 2 days and then,
you go back out
the next weekend. But the amount of time you got before, so it really was kind of a blessing, the COVID thing for my art wise.
Right. Do you have a lot of shows? I've seen your schedule on your Facebook, and also actually Scare Fair is on that schedule as well. Did you add to it?
Yeah, yeah, but I might subtract because I found out about 3 weeks ago that my landlord, he's like, I've had enough, get out of my house. No, he didn't, but he's here a while. And I was like, yeah. And I go, I had never intended to stay here. It was convenient because I was traveling so much, but I'm renting a studio space from a friend in his basement and I have a room and he has he has a girlfriend and it's kind of weird. But so I found I have to move. And so I have September 1st is when I'm supposed to be out, but I have shows every weekend in September. I have things scheduled probably 8 of the next 10 weekends. Like everything's happening at once. And now I got to move in the middle of it. So like these white walls, this used to be filled with art. But as soon as I knew I had to go, I
packed away.
Except for the art equipment. So I got nothing done for a full week, just throwing away, sorting, and just getting ready to move. So I'm ready to go. So it can be a quick transition. I can get right back to work. Yeah. But I don't know that I'm going to be able to make every one of those shows, but I am not giving up. I hope I can.
Good. Doing Scare Fair, putting together a list, putting together a list of people that are going to appear. I put on a person who you automatically gave attention to. You and David Harrigan both gave it attention. That was, I had posted that Joe Bob Briggs was going to appear at Scare Fair on October 30th. And you two responded so quickly at that post. Is he a big fan of yours? Do you like watching him?
I watched him when he was on years ago, and hadn't thought about him too much. And then Shudder came about, and they brought back The Last Drive-In.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's fucking perfect. Not only do they play like bad movies, but they down, and it's like comedic, but you get to see these movies you never saw, or if it's a movie that you saw before, it makes it more interesting. But as far as like writing and creating and stuff like that, the idea of how they break in and tell you, oh well, this guy was killed in a car wreck a week later, and they tell about the production and the director had a problem. It makes the things like way more interesting than the movie itself. So I love that format, and I've watched like every one of his like those drive-in movies, and I've rewatched them. And I don't really care about guest shows that much, but to me, to see Joe Bob would be fucking cool.
Yeah.
So
He dissects movies very well and explains a lot about the movie that you had no idea, and some of it maybe you had no curiosity before, but once he explains it, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. This guy this character used to be on this movie and this movie and produced by this guy and directed by this guy. So you kind of like connect the dots. He allows you to connect the dots between movies and actors and
yeah,
characters.
a great one. My favorite of them all was a movie called Deadbeat at Dawn, and it was this independently made movie, and everything like they wrecked this car and then they drove it into the water and it didn't sink. And they have the backstory where they bought it for $100 and they couldn't get it to sink, so they just abandoned it. And then the cops came to film school and arrested them because they tracked them. And so like so much of that makes the movie experience so much more interesting than just a B movie.
No, a lot of these cons that you go to, you're not able to meet a whole lot of people because you're signing autographs. You have a line of your own. You have people purchasing from you. So you don't get to go out and venture the con yourself.
I could, I guess, but I don't really. Like I see everybody I know on the way in, on the way out, and at the bar.
At the bar, yeah.
Not a guy that usually goes right back to the room. I'm usually somebody that likes to, hang out, have some drinks, and talk shop. But as far as seeing guests, I don't usually do that. I like to be at the table. I camp out at the table. If I have to use the bathroom, I use the bathroom. But it's rare that at a show you won't find me at the table during the hours. And there aren't a lot of guests that I haven't seen before or actually want to go talk to. Like there are guys like, J. Scott Campbell. But what do you go? Oh, I love your work. What am I going to do? Go. I say really.
Get in the back of the line.
I just don't know what to say to guys like that. And every time I have approached people that I really love, artists, I put my foot in my mouth. Like every time you try and compliment somebody, like when I do, it always comes out like backhand. Like it's just so, yeah, I mostly see friends, artist friends. Those are the people I interact with the most.
Now you mentioned J. Scott Campbell. Is there any other artists that you would like to meet that you were influenced by, or?
I don't know that I really need to meet anybody. There are guys I'd love to have a piece of art by, but modern guys like Joe Mad is fucking awesome. J. Scott Campbell, Art Adams is in my top two, probably with Adam Hughes. And I've met Adam Hughes and Art Adams multiple times, and every time I'm like shaking and just feel like an idiot, like I'm fanboying out. So
no, I mentioned to you that we're gonna have a big comic book artist, and that was Chad Harden next year. And you said something about wanting him to sign something, or you're influenced by something that he had done.
Oh no, I said that I liked his work a lot.
Yeah.
I also said I considered asking him if I could commission him for a cover, but I heard that. So
yeah,
that my book has regular and nude covers. I didn't, only because for one thing, I don't want to offend him by asking for nudity, and the other thing is I need a nude cover.
Yeah.
It's just kind of my game plan.
Is that kind of the freedom that you have as an independent artist and doing your own book, to have that freedom to choose whether you're going to use nudity or not? Is that a plus?
Choose who I'm going to use,
or just choose your own art, or your own being able to decide whether you want a nude cover or want some nudity in your own book, and you don't have to answer to a publisher or.
Yeah, I guess you have freedom to do what you want, but I think most people that would hire me would know that that's like I'm sure in the Kim book there's nudity, but there's boobs, and it's sexy, but like hardcore, like again, I love pinup stuff and I love gore, but I want it to be fun gore and fun pinup stuff, not hardcore pornography or dark violent, like my violence is just so over the top, like twisted and kind of, at least I hope people don't take it too seriously.
Now, doing your own book, and is this the first time independently that you're doing your own Kickstarter?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Kickstarter has been a pretty popular thing amongst a lot of artists, and it gives you the independence to get away from a publisher to create your own thing. Have you found Kickstarter to be a direction that you want to go primarily with?
Yeah, I don't think there's any other place to go for what I do. I don't see any future for what I do in comic shops. When I work for Action Lab, I won't even tell you what they paid me for covers. It's embarrassing what they paid for a cover. If the amount of comics you'd have to sell to go through Diamond to make money is impossible.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting their hand in it, and they take like 50% off the top. Comixology, is so. I just, and people know me from Kickstarters. I've been working on a lot of Kickstarter projects, and I haven't even about, if somebody approaches me about doing a retailer variant, or if somebody, like, it's nice. And it was awesome working on Zombie Tramp when the books would go through comic shops, because people that only follow comic shops wouldn't know who I was without that. So it was a big help. But there are people also that just follow Kickstarters. Like, Kickstarter's become a big thing. And to have the freedom to do what you want to do and control the project and control every, it's just, I just don't see a future for, I don't even consider Diamond and comic shops a future for what I do.
Kickstarter is sort of like for artists and people that create their own product. Is kind of like the Napster of today's music industry, where Napster was totally going into independently, but they were doing things illegally. But now you have Spotify, you have Pandora, where musicians could actually just plug their music right into them and be heard, where they don't have to go through a record company. They would like to get that big dollar, but they can sell their music on their own.
Yeah, I don't know how Spotify is legal, because it's awesome.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And for what it costs, if you're a music fan, you listen to a lot of music. What it costs, it's fucking fantastic. But at the same time, there are so many bands that I listen to that I discovered on Spotify that I never would have heard if I had to drop, money on a CD. It's introduced me to so many bands that I just wouldn't have known.
Right.
But yeah, I love Spotify.
Yeah. The only thing is with Spotify or some of those other platforms is that the music that you collect are only those certain songs that you like, or and you put it on a drive or whatever. I enjoy having the product, the actual disc or whatever, with me as well. And I went back. I'm starting to go back, and all the CDs that I sold throughout the years, and record albums that I've sold throughout the years, I'm going back and repurchasing them because I want to be able to play them and listen to the whole entire album, opposed to just listening to one song. And now with technology, I could do better mixes and stuff with my equipment. But
I still have my CDs and all my records. I just don't have time to just put them on. I can right above my drawing table, I can access whatever I want. Playing through it's just yeah. I even you used to have nostalgia for record albums, and I found like a CD recently that I went to give to somebody and was like holding the CD. It was just like, wow, I remember these. It felt like,
yeah.
But
it's kind of thing of the past, but it is coming back, and albums in a big way are coming back. they're redigitalizing them, and they're also reworking the vinyl as well by imposing a picture on the vinyl to make it an exclusive. So people want to go buy the album. Now it's exclusive. Well, that same album we bought um, 20 years ago was only like $5 picked up from Tower Records or Licorice Pizza or one of these album places back then. And now they're like 25 to $30.
Yeah, I used to go to record exchanges, and people would cash in the records. You can get them used records like so cheap. After a while, I actually took all my important records, all my rare records, and I digitized them myself and then put them in my. So I have them all on my computer, and I can just access them through the computer. And it's not the same thing listening to a record, but it's just like with Spotify. I can put it on my Xbox, listen to it through the TV. I can go. It's all on my phone.
Yeah.
So
you take it to your phone, you can take your computer, to your TV, in your car.
It's yeah. I just don't have time to take a record out but I can't part with some of them. I have a lot of like really rare punk vinyls and stuff that I just couldn't. I don't know that I'll ever put on the turntable, but I don't want to get rid of them either.
Where can our fans find you on social media?
I am Bill Mckay Art on Instagram, Bill Mckay Art on Twitter, BillMckay.92 on Facebook. If you just I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook, and Bill Mckay on DeviantArt. If anybody ever went back to DeviantArt, I still have that I update every now and then. I like the interface, like how you can look at the artwork, but it's a ghost town. But yeah, but those are the most
Now, if somebody wanted to see you live, they could go on your site and you have a schedule up or on your Facebook page. And you're also going to be at Scare Fair on October 30th here in Southern California in Victorville at the San Bernardino Fairgrounds. I'm very, very thrilled to have you as part of that.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I know it's going to be fun.
And you're going to do an exclusive cover for us or for Scare Fair. Is that right?
Yeah, my hymn book will probably not be out, but I will have I do limited line art books, and I will have a Kim preview book that I will have at the show.
That's great. Awesome. And that'll be exclusive for fans that attend that show. Now, people in Southern California or California in general will come out if they're fans of yours. And also because of where we're located in Victorville, we're also close to Arizona and Nevada as well. So we have a couple of artists from there. We have some vendors from Las Vegas as well. So coming out on October 30th. See Bill Mckay, see some other artists such as Dan Mendoza, Isaac Bell, David Harrigan, Nightmare Lynch, JP Roth, Bass, who's Eric Basadua, and there's some others. And there's also some artists, see Joe Bob Briggs. And we're going to have Walter Phelan, Dr. Satan from House of a Thousand Corpses as well. And Eileen Dietz, who is, she was probably one of the first ones that start off a character in horror, like a Dr. Satan type character that isn't in the movie as much, but is not predominantly known just by looking at that character. Eileen Dietz did Pazuzu from The Exorcist, so she's kind of the legend to have her as well. Well, thank you very much, Bill. I appreciate you being on. I enjoyed the time talking to you.
Thank you so much, Eddie. I'm really looking forward to the show.
Okay. Well, it's gonna air on Tuesday, which is the 13th, actually. I believe July 13th, this Tuesday. Pardon me?
I said Scare Fair. I'm looking forward to.
Oh,
not
Scare
just-
Fair. Okay, thought you meant yeah, the expo. You said show. Okay, the expo you're looking forward to, not specifically the podcast, but yeah, we're looking forward to it as well. Putting this thing together was quite a treat, and having you guys there at the expo it's going to be awesome. So coming out. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you so much, Eddie.
All right, bye everybody.